Welcome to another episode of the Based Marriage Podcast. The last interview with my wife was particularly popular. The one with her was particularly popular. She had some ideas, some thoughts, some questions about codependency and how to be a good wife and all those things. So she's going to be on this show probably in the next episode that we can have another discussion about that. She likes to watch my videos and then likes to comment on them, and I think that most of her comments are particularly interesting. So we'll have her on soon. But today we're going to talk some more about women in marriage. And I'm a man, so I would know, right? Yes, because just because you don't have the plumbing, just because you are ontologically different, does not mean that you can't have good and valid insights about women. So in talking about women in marriage, there's always a power dynamic at play in the discussion about women in marriage, making sure that they secure their power or are strong and independent. Today, I will read some excerpts from a relatively unknown but highly authoritative source that helps put all of this into practice. So women, oftentimes, modern women, are looking for a power dynamic, or they're imposing a power dynamic on their relationships, both with men and with each other. So here is the quote. It cannot be doubted that the woman contributes more than the man to the happiness of the family hearth. How many of you woman contributes more than the man? How many of you did that? See, there's the power dynamic at play, having to be better than someone or someone having to be less than you. That power dynamic, we got to get rid of that. It doesn't work. It's counterproductive. It puts your desire for power above other things, and frankly, that just really wrecks a lot of stuff. It wrecks relationships, wrecks the family. So, okay, starting this quote again. It cannot be doubted that the woman contributes more than the man to the happiness of the family hearth. To the husband belongs the primacy in ensuring the material well-being of the family and of the home, in determining his future and that of his children. To the wife belong those thousand tiny details and particulars, those immeasurable daily cares and attentions which mold the family atmosphere and render it healthy, bright, and comfortable by her presence, or else make it dull, unpleasant, and stifling by their careless execution or entire absence. The work of the wife within the home should be always like that of the valiant woman, so highly praised by the Holy Scriptures as the woman in whom the heart of her husband trusts, and who will render him good and not evil all the days of her life. For him, the family hearth will become the place where, at the end of his working day, he will restore his physical and moral powers in rest, peace, and intimate enjoyment. Anyways, that quote, for him, the family hearth will become a place where at the end of his working day, he will restore his physical and moral powers in rest, peace, and intimate enjoyment. What a beautiful testimony to the richness of the feminine womanhood. This was written by a man. It was written by a pope. He's not even married. He refers to her as valiant, having the trust of her husband, contributing more to the happiness of the home. He recognizes the true goodness and treasure of women when they embrace the proper state for which they were designed. It brings light to all in the home. Who would reject such an honor? Who would reject it? Women, you have this fantastic power, this fantastic ability to bring happiness and peace and light and warmth to the home. Who of you would reject such an honor? The powers that be currently occupy and influence the culture. They lie to women. They use social engineering to tell them that the greatest job they could ever perform is a dishonor. That itself is the very definition of oppression, telling you that the greatest thing you could ever do is actually a dishonor. It's a burden. It's a curse. Many young women are realizing the lies they were told their entire lives, and that life in the working world is not as good as older generations promised. It ends in bitterness and loneliness. This wasn't nearly their doing. This was intentionally engineered by the enemies of Christ. The rejection of the truth of Jesus Christ leads to the rejection of all truths. That is a fantastic excerpt. It comes from a book called The Woman in the Modern World, which I just mentioned. And in the same allocution, Pope Pius XI warns wives that they carry greater responsibility for the emotional condition of the family, that following the current culture of complaining renders the household stale and cold, lacking the warmth that the wife could otherwise provide. Her coldness turns him away, and how tragic it is that then she turns away from him, and it was her coldness that caused it. Pope Pius XI explains this as the virtue that women could possess if they wanted to, but does not state that women will choose it, and actually states that it's contrary to the current culture. All right, so in short, women, you have this tremendous power, and it has an impact. It has this great force within the family, and you can embrace it and decide to use it. See yourself as, and your attitude, your mood, how you conduct yourself in the home as this thing that brings warmth and light and power to all others. Or you can neglect it. You can fall into the modern culture of complaining like so many women do, and that it's a wet blanket on the family. It brings down everyone around you. It brings down your husband and your kids. Yeah, sometimes bad things happen, but you have this fantastic gift of helping people. Why are you focusing on the complaining that bad things happen instead of actually bringing this gift, this fantastic gift that you are uniquely suited for, instead of bringing this to the world? Why are you focusing on the complaining? Okay, so in the last episode, we examined the consequences of a man divorcing his wife. Now, this week we're examining the consequences for the wife if she divorces. Now, you better buckle up because this was kind of shocking just doing the preparation for this segment. So, you may or may not know that 80% of divorces are filed by women. Okay, so out of every 10, 8 of them are filed by women, 2 are filed by men. So, a woman divorcing her wife, a woman doesn't have a wife. A woman divorcing her husband is far more prevalent than men divorcing their wives, 4 times as much. That doesn't mean, and a lot of people get confused about that, that doesn't mean that 80% of women divorce, nor does it mean that 80% of wives divorce. It just means that of all of those divorces that are initiated, 80% of the time it was initiated by a woman, not her husband. So if you have the big bulk, let's say 100 marriages, and let's say only like 4 of them end up in divorce, let's do 5 just to make easy math. 5 out of the 100 end up in divorce. 4 of them will be the wife initiating for the husband. So out of 100 marriages, 4 times the wife would be the one to file for divorce, and only once the husband would. Now, that 100 number, that's not actually true. Also, don't get disheartened about that half of all marriages end in divorce. We all have that aunt or cousin or that woman we work with who's been married and divorced like 5 times. She has serious past. Those are the types of people who are wrecking the curve, okay? There are people like me who aren't divorced. There are people like my aunts and uncles who didn't divorce. There are people like your aunts and uncles who didn't divorce. The number is skewed because some people seem to use marriage more like an icebreaker than like an icebreaker than like a lifelong commitment. So that really skews the statistics there. So don't get disheartened by that. Half of all marriages in divorce. Yeah, but like 8% of all married people are responsible for that over 50% of all divorces. It's just they're marrying and divorcing each other over and over. All right. Back to our segue. So women in divorce. All right. Now, ladies, you know how is harmful because it paints an unrealistic picture or standard of women, and right? TV and social media are harmful to women because it creates an unrealistic picture of divorce for women. And women fall for it and destroy their own lives and the lives of everyone around them. So you've seen this before, haven't you? Like on Instagram or TikTok. Anyways, the internet and social media gives women an unrealistic view of what a relationship should look like, for one. So Instagram is like pornography for women, in that it gives them this, oh, we have to do this stupid test, or the, oh, we're going to do the this is what a relationship should be. This is what a marriage should be, is doing choreography together and dancing to these cute videos. Wouldn't that be fun? And then if he says no, that's like a big hit. It's these content creators coming up with creative ideas, but then women believe that this is how a relationship should be. And if it's not doing that, if you don't have the cute autumn pictures, if you don't have all the color coordinated outfits, or the day at the farm or whatever, if you can't make your life look like the content creators do on the internet, then your life is missing something. And so social media is essentially pornography for women, creating these unrealistic expectations about real life. And they're looking for that little magic cinema of life, rather than what life actually looks like, which is a passage of time without a soundtrack, and being alive in the moment, and trying to have joy in whatever moment you may be experiencing at this particular moment. So, but it also social media creates an unrealistic picture of divorce for women. There are tons of videos out there of women who are like, I was unhappy, he was emotionally abusive, and I divorced, and I'm living my best life. A lot of these videos are copes. These are women who are trying to cope with the fact that they really screwed up, and they don't want to admit that. Okay, well, I divorced. Well, I'm gonna have happy thoughts and think, oh yes, Mr. Right is just right around the corner. I deserve to have a life where I'm not emotionally abused. These women many times are sitting at home at night, eating the ice cream, watching television, doom scrolling on social media, and feeling extraordinarily lonely, just trying to do what they can to ignore those feelings of loneliness and regret. And social media, also, a lot of the content creators encourage women, no, you're going to do it, you're going to make it. And the sisterhood, as we call it, keeps encouraging them to push forward. Don't acknowledge that you made a mistake by divorcing, and just keep blaming him for as long as you can, trying to deny reality. So it paints this picture. Now, there are women who go on social media as well who did fall into that trap of believing what social media told them, or the creators on social media told them about divorcing. They believed this strong, independent woman, sisterhood content. You deserve to be happy. And then they go post their videos where they're bawling their eyes out. And they're going, I threw away a good man. I made a mistake. And they feel awful about it. Yeah, you did. You threw away a good man. These women are falling for these social media posts for this content, and they're ruining their lives and the lives of their husbands and the lives of their children. Now, it's important that I put this after the woman in the modern world, because the content of the woman in the modern world is, ladies, you have this tremendous power to influence the mood of the home, to make it a peaceful retreat for your husband. Or as 1 Peter chapter 3, which is echoed in some of these documents, to have a peaceful and tranquil countenance, to embody peace and tranquility within yourself, and that brings peace into the home. And so a lot of the women who go and divorce their husbands are not bringing that peace and tranquility to them. They are bringing the complaining, the entitlement. And they don't realize that they are the ones that really, truly have the greater power to bring peace into the home. And so they do exactly as Pope Pius XI warned, that following the culture of complaining renders the household stale and cold, lacking the warmth that the wife could otherwise provide, that her coldness turns him away, and how tragic it is that she then turns away from him, and it was her coldness that caused it. So, TV and social media are harmful to women because it creates an unrealistic picture of divorce for women, and women fall for it and destroy their own lives and the lives of everyone around them. Now, what am I recommending? Turn it off. Turn off the TV, turn off social media, Keep listening to the Based Marriage Podcast, where we are going to tell you the truth. But turn it off. Turn off social media. Stop consuming TV, movies, social media. These are made by people who are not Christian. Like, they're not trying to live a life that's pleasing to God. Let's put it that way. They're not trying to live a life that's pleasing to God. These are people who are trying to live a life that's pleasing to themselves. They don't see themselves as a gift. They don't see the duty and responsibility in marriage. Many of these people have just rejected Jesus Christ altogether, the ones who are creating these TV and movies. The filter through which they create these things is not a filter that is congruent with Catholic life, with Christian life, with the life of someone who is wanting to live a life pleasing to God. The women who use social media to talk about divorce and about emotional abuse, which isn't really a thing, and it's not. They use social media to cope, meaning they lie to themselves and to you to get validation that they did the right thing. They're using you to try to cover their bad decisions. Not only does it not work for them, but it makes acceptance and practice of divorce contagious. What people often do is see the videos, the divorce wasn't at all like she imagined, that it was way worse. The comments are full of stupid women also trying to make her feel better. Oh, you'll make it through this. There's sunshine on the other side of the storm. And stay strong, sister. You see those videos of the women who are crying. They're bawling their eyes out. Those are the comments that you see littering their combox. Forget that. They should be shaming her and telling her, go back to your husband with your heart in your hands and on your hands and knees and beg him and your kids for forgiveness for taking for granted the life that he provides for you that you could never provide for yourself. Now, this is the truth. This is just a matter of practicality, okay? The husband provides for his wife a life that she could never provide for herself, which is many, many, many husbands. And I know there are certainly exceptions, but many husbands do provide a life for her she could never provide for herself. That is, to be able to stay home with the kids and not have to go to work. She cannot provide that life for herself, period. She would have to work and would not be able to stay home with the kids. Or she could stay home with the kids and just be, destitute. But he provides a life for her she could never provide for herself. And many times, when both in the couple are working, many times it is because they live a standard of living beyond what is necessary. They might drive newer cars. They might have a bigger house. We don't have a big house. We don't drive new cars. Both of our cars are well over 100,000 miles. We could probably afford to replace one, but not with something new. I'm not doing that. That's insanity. But there is this fantastic truck. It's like 50 years old. It's a fantastic pickup truck. I've had my eye on for some time. That may become part of my collection. My collection of two. I have as many cars in my collection as I have concussions since COVID. I'm a collector, but I try to limit my collection of things to two. So I have two cars. I have two concussions.
Well, that explains why he has the positions he does.
All right. So he provides a life for you you could never provide for yourself, which is essentially you could stay home with the kids if you wanted to. Yeah, it might be tight. Yeah, you might do a little bit of work on the side, or he might have to pick up a little extra job, or he might have to figure out how to make more money. But he provides a life for you that you can't provide for yourself. If it were just you by yourself, you would be unable to maintain the life that you currently have, even if you are working. He most likely, in most cases, not all, because we know the exceptions, but in most cases, he makes more money for you that you are able to get off of work to go pick up the kids and then spend the afternoon with them. That's not a life that he has. That's a life that you have because of his extra work. So the friends or the commenters should be shaming her and telling her, go back to your husband on your hands and knees and beg him and your kids forgiveness for taking for granted the life that he provides for you and that you could never provide for yourself. But let's pretend that the woman doesn't go back to him and apologize, begging for forgiveness, and doesn't want to reconcile. And she's awarded custody of the kids. All right? So let's say you are a divorced woman, a woman who's divorcing your kids, and you are awarded custody of the kids. That brings us to single motherhood, because that's what you are now. Now, you may have seen the movie Jerry Maguire, where they say a single mother is a sacred thing, and you've got Cuba Gooding Jr. playing the sage in this movie. Don't go watch this movie. If you haven't seen it, don't go watch it. It's junk. Like I said, the people who put out this stuff are not Christian. They're not Catholic. They do not live a life that is pleasing to God. They are not trying to. They don't have that mental filter through which they're interpreting the world. And they have this whole, the single mother is a sacred thing nonsense. And Cuba Gooding Jr., who plays the enlightened black, is guiding the very successful sports agent, the white guy, in the ways of the world, because the white guy's just too dumb to figure this out. No, a single mother is not a sacred thing. It's a shameful thing. And we need to stop treating it like it's okay. And stop holding these mothers up as heroes for wearing all the hats. She's not a hero. I mean, a huge number of times she fought to take the kids from her husband, to deny him custody of his own kids. That's not a thing of a hero. She put that on herself. She wanted that. She is choosing that. She's not a hero for that. So, like I said, being a single mother is not a sacred thing. It's a shameful thing. And we need to stop treating it like it's okay. Stop holding these mothers up as heroes for wearing all the hats. Being a single mother shows that you either chose the wrong man to have babies with, or you chose the right man, but you didn't know how to keep him. There are exceptions where a good man dies and leaves a wife and kids. That's a sad thing. We're not talking about that here. That's a totally separate thing, and it's much more rare than the case of divorce, and we're talking about divorce today. So, yes, that idea that a woman doesn't know how to keep her husband, yes, that's a real thing. Men are easier than Dr. Laura's book, The Proper Care and Feeding of Husbands, which is, there's some decent stuff in there. There's some that's not quite decent, because again, she does not believe in the truth of Jesus Christ. So her filter is different. There are some things to watch out for in that book. I don't recommend that either. So men are easy. There are really only a few rules to keep your husband happy, to keep his attention, to keep him. Number one is never disrespect him. And this is where a tremendous number of women fail. They disrespect their husbands. They treat him like he's a bother. If you treat him well, he will perform well for you. He will do good husbandly things for you. He provides material wealth and goods. He will enjoy you. But if you disrespect him, he will turn away from you. Remember, the woman's coldness turns the husband away. And when he turns away, she then turns away too. So the few rules. Number one, don't disrespect him. Never disrespect him. Number two, be femininely beautiful for him. Stop walking around in the sweats. Come on. We used to joke in college, that's a sign that you've given up. Don't walk around in the sweats all the time. There might, do better than that. Be femininely beautiful for him. Number three, smile frequently and be playful. Number four, if you get easily offended, go to counseling. Go find, you really have to vet counselors nowadays. And I'm talking from experience. I've both been to counseling and I've also been a counselor. I was a counselor for 6 years. Now I work in a slightly separate capacity, but essentially helping people. Go to counseling, but really vet the person. If it's a divorced woman, just stay away, period. If you're easily offended, you're dealing with pride. You need to get over that. It's very simple. Maybe you work with a spiritual director, and instead of going to him and complaining about your husband or your marital issues, really be honest and upfront and say, here's the deal. I get really offended really quick. I'm not even going to try to say, well, it's because my husband does this thing that I don't like, because now you're going to lead him into just siding with you. That's not going to work. So you go, here's the deal. I get really offended. That's a huge flaw for me. And I need help dealing with that. I'm not even going to try to cover it in what my husband did. I get easily offended. I get butthurt. I'm emotionally immature. If you use butthurt, he might not know what that means. But it'd be really cool if you did. Be a lot cooler if you did. So we'll have to do another episode on how to find a good counselor. Whatever. Different story for a different day. All right, back to divorce. So you're out on your own, you and the kids, okay? You're a single mom. First, you're going to be lonely, like deathly lonely. Many of your friends will fade away. The ones who supported you, you will see them for what they are. They're women with poor judgment who encouraged you to do this, but they're not suffering the consequences like you are. Loneliness, abandonment, isolation. Okay? But you can just go to Home Depot and act helpless to attract men and date and marry some man from there, right? No, it doesn't actually work that way. For one, men are going to Home Depot because they're working on a project. And if you're trying to pick up men there, they are totally in the project mindset at that moment. They're not looking for women. And if you try to, this is also part of maybe one of the flaws why your relationship didn't do well at home is because you didn't understand when my husband is midstream of doing a thing, stay the hell out of the way. Don't interrupt him. Because he's focusing, he's concentrating, he's got this important thing. And by me interrupting him, by me saying, hey, pay attention to me, I'm making myself more important than what he's focusing on in that moment. I'm interrupting his mind flow. So if you're going to Home Depot to try to find a man, you're pretty much doing the same thing. You're interrupting his workflow. So you go to Home Depot. You're going to look to attract men, okay? And date and marry some man. It's that easy, right? No, it's not that easy. The first assumption is that you know how to pick a man, which statistically is false, because if you think your husband was a bad dude, he wasn't a good man, then you have a 100% failure rate. The second assumption is that your looks and personality will be enough. Well, since you first got married, your looks have faded significantly. Since having 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 kids, maybe you just had one, maybe you had 2, but your looks have faded significantly. You're not a 22-year-old with a tight body anymore. You're sagging. You know you're sagging. You know you're sagging in certain places. That's why you're buying the other clothing items to hold those places together or tighten them up so that they look really great when you're wearing the clothes. But if you take those off straight out of the shower, you're not that 10. You're not that 7 you think you are. You're sagging. Your face is starting to sag and wrinkle. And we can spot Botox from a mile away. That alone, just your looks, the fact that you have aged beyond that 22-year-old with a tight body, especially if you've had kids, your body is not that tight body anymore. There are marks that you have had kids. That alone dropped your market value significantly. And by market value, I mean just looking. They're like, yeah, well, she's had kids. I can see she's... I'm not getting fresh fruit right off the cart. Now, that you're divorced is also a mark against you on the market. A good and healthy man is suspicious of why you got divorced. I'm talking about a good and healthy man. A man who chooses you, who says yes to you, is not necessarily a good and healthy man. That's an assumption a lot of people make, but it's not true. A good and healthy man is suspicious of why you got divorced. He goes, oh, divorced. And he's thinking, who filed, you or him? Why couldn't you keep your husband? If you left him, are you going to leave me? Why'd you run? Oh, it wasn't that you weren't able to keep him. You decided to leave. Why did you leave? So right off the bat, if you say you're divorced, he's suspicious. A man who is not suspicious or not hesitant is a man with a past, with his own baggage, and it's probably not pretty. And no, it's not romantic for you two to live together and support each other in this. This is not a Hallmark movie. This is real life. Having kids significantly diminished your market value. A man who wants to marry a single mom who knows he doesn't just have to feed one other mouth, but also the kids and handle their problems. And they're not going to see him as a dad. They already have a dad. So he's going to raise someone else's kids and they won't love him like a dad. Plus, there's the instability of shared custody, and he has to manage a relationship with your ex and all the drama that comes with that too. That sucks for him. You'll find a man out of desperation because being a single mom is miserable. You'll compromise on important things, accept bad behaviors you wouldn't otherwise accept, and you'll label it as, God sent me this wonderful man because he rescued you from poverty and loneliness, but he has his uglies too. And many times that leads to your second divorce because you overlooked that he drank too much or he had to be gone for a week at a time for work, except maybe sometimes it wasn't actually work and he had other women on the side, or he had another family altogether on the side. Or she overlooked that he sometimes got a little angry and smacked the kids around, but he'll never full-on hit them, she explains. There was that one time when shopping for Christmas lights, she says, with tears welling up in her eyes, my ex-husband never treated the kids like that. He had a lot of other problems, but he never did that. And now I have to live with that decision and what it did to my kids, to take them away from their father and then put them in a home with this man who hurt them and caused so much pain. This is not stuff I'm making up. This is stuff that I've heard in my professional work. So then this single mother hires a counselor because she thinks she's a bad mom and she needs someone to tell her that she's not, or to help her make the pain go away. But all the reassurance doesn't fix that her one son is a drug addict and her daughter is in and out of different relationships and living with her boyfriend. Life becomes a series of moral compromises as a cope to avoid what stares her in the face. She caused serious and irreparable damage to her kids by divorcing her husband. And the good man that she found on marriage number 3 can't fix it. Those problems are now deeply rooted. So you as a single mom, you're on the market again. And you got your annulment from the diocese. And you're hoping to find Mr. Right. Okay, I'm free. I'm free to marry again. Okay, now I'm going to go out and find Mr. Right. Okay, this is the part where you want to sit down. You want to buckle up. You may even want to get a bucket. For every 10,000 people in the U.S., there are, at the high end, four Catholic men who are unmarried or divorced, between the ages of 30 and 50 years old, who is financially stable, who are not morbidly obese, not alcoholics, not in a coma, and not in prison. These 4 men in 10,000 people include men with a criminal record who are not in prison. It includes truck drivers, oil rig workers, men who suffer from being attracted to other men and have little attraction to women, men who still live at home, men in group homes for special needs, men from foreign countries who don't speak English. It includes smokers. It includes men who don't bathe regularly. It includes men who still play video games and men who still watch. The 4 out of 10,000 people include all those men as well. So the chances that you find a normal, healthy Catholic man who wants to raise your children and deal with your ex-husband are basically zero. And you and all the other women who divorce their husbands are trusting that God will bring me the right man. There are 3.39 million divorced Catholic women in the U.S. And there are 3.39 million divorced Catholic women in the U.S. There are 153,000 eligible Catholic men in the U.S. That's one Catholic man between 30 and 50 that aren't in prison, that aren't alcoholics, that are not morbidly obese. So skinny men that aren't alcoholics. No, not even skinny. Just skinny or husky men. There's one Catholic man to every 24 divorced Catholic women. God is not going to bring you that man. Deal with reality. He's not going to. 24 divorced Catholic women. And you have to remember, these men between 30 and 50, if you're trying to get one of these men that's between 30 and 50, who's not an alcoholic, not in prison, and not morbidly obese, you, divorced Catholic woman, are not only competing with 23 other divorced Catholic women, you're also competing with the entire market of single women who have never been divorced. Well, a 30-year-old isn't going to want a 22-year-old. Yeah, he is. Why wouldn't he? And it's not sick for him to think so, too. or a 24-year-old never married, or a 26-year-old never married, or a 28-year-old never married, or a 30, 34, 35. It doesn't matter. You, 24 divorced Catholic women, you are competing with each other and with the entire market of single women. And yes, older men are attractive to younger women. I saw studies talking about a man peaks at 35 years old. That is, peak attractiveness for a man is 35 years old. 35. For women who are 22 years old, 24 years old. You can gripe and fuss and say, well, they don't know what they're talking about. Well, they don't. Doesn't matter. If he is dating a 22-year-old, a 24-year-old, and she likes him, that's really all that matters. You can gripe about her judgment or about him being sick or whatever. It doesn't matter for when it's not sick. For two, that's on the market for him. And the fact that you're griping about it points to you just have a lame personality. That alone, the fact that you're griping, well, it's 22-year-old, you're going to dump on the 22-year-olds, that points to you have a dumpy personality, which decreases your market value. So there is one Catholic man between 30 and 50 for every 24 divorced Catholic women, and those divorced Catholic women have to compete with women who have never been married. Good luck. Deal with reality. God is not going to send you that man. That means 4 out of 100 of you will get a man. But he could not speak English. He's just not morbidly obese, not an alcoholic, and not in prison currently. And not in a coma. He's not in a coma. Whew, that's a really good list of things. Thank God he's not in a coma. So aside from statistics, divorcing your husband is rebellion against the natural and divine order. God is not going to cover your mistake for you. He's going to let you suffer the consequences of your choice because it brings you to a place of humility in the long run. The place of humility in the long run is, I really screwed up. I did not do well for my husband and my kids and for myself. I did not do well for those things. I knew I shouldn't divorce, and I did it anyway. I made excuses for it. I did it anyway. And God goes, yes, okay, I'm going to allow you to suffer through the consequences of divorce, just like he allows men to suffer through the consequences of addiction. It's to bring you to a place of humility, to finally go, okay, yes, I'm really sorry. I can't do this without you. I made a whole bunch of mistakes. I lived a selfish life. I chose sin. I chose what I wanted out of what was best for the family, for my husband. Devotion to marriage. He's going to let you suffer the consequences of your choice. He'll help you through it. He's not a jerk. He's not sitting there trying to like bury your face in it, but he's going, shoot, is that what you wanted? I mean, statistically, I'm just not going to manifest men for all of these women who decided to divorce their husbands. He will help you through it. But you're inflicting that on your family, on your kids, that's going to really mess things up for them. He's just not going to operate outside of the outside of our free will like that. He helps us come to him, but he doesn't erase the fact that you can't afford milk or that you have to work extra hours to pay rent because you divorced your husband, or that you married another guy to cover up the fact, to pay for you essentially, because being a single mom is really hard. And so you married a guy who is probably not a very good guy. Or he's not as good as you wanted. He's not probably as good as your first husband because you didn't actually want to serve your husband. You wanted to have power over him. You wanted to play the victim. You wanted to fall into the culture of the day rather than divorcing from the culture and going, I want to live a life that's pleasing to God. I want to live a life that's pleasing to God, and I'll do what you have for me. Now, you got into this just like everybody else did. You have to really be a fighter to go, I'm getting away from the culture. I'm going to do what's right and good, and I have to turn off all these voices. So if you are listening to these voices about divorce, about your husband is emotionally abusive, and we'll talk about that another time, about if your husband is emotionally abusive, I really strongly encourage you to turn that stuff off. Even if you think it's just entertaining, you shouldn't be entertaining yourself with stuff that actually assaults your intellect. It slowly wears you down on various messages, and it gets you to normalize those things. Even if you, but I'm actually against it. Well, but you're watching it. You become what you watch. You are what you eat. So God is going to let you suffer the consequences of your choice in order to allow you to be broken down to a place of humility. But then you're looking back going, man, that is a really painful lesson. I wish I had stayed with my husband, or I wish I had stayed with my husband because my kids wouldn't be dealing with these things. Stay together for the kids. Yeah, that's a real thing. It's important. So even with an annulment, you are severely upending your current lifestyle. You are inflicting irreversible harm on your children, who will bear the biggest burden of your divorce, denying your children and grandchildren the stability of a nuclear family. Even with an annulment, which are handed out like birth control pills at a college health clinic, annulments don't reverse or mitigate the psychological, emotional, financial, generational damage that's inflicted in breaking up a home and a marriage. Your children will not go to grandma and grandpa's house and see the stability of their relationship. They'll go to grandpa's house. And then sometimes they'll go to grandma's house. And they'll feel a split loyalty because they'll know, oh, grandma and grandpa don't love each other anymore. Do I have to please them? Because that's what children do. They want to please the adults that they love. And so, well, I can't talk about grandpa over at grandma's house because it might hurt her feelings, or she might think that I love him more than I love her. Oh, well, I can't talk about grandma at grandpa's house because I don't want him to feel bad. You're putting all this on your grandkids. You don't even realize you're doing it. But I've seen these stories. I've experienced this myself because my own grandparents were divorced. But I've also seen this in many stories with people that I've worked in helping, that they had a split loyalty, and they had to be concerned as children, because this is what children do. They had to be concerned as children about the feelings of grandma and grandpa. They had to go to two different houses for the same side of the family on Christmas and on Thanksgiving. They had to be concerned about their loyalties. They didn't have that unified experience of Christmas, of holidays, of gifts. And so you're not just inflicting that upon your children. And it doesn't matter what you buy them. Your children are going to go, oh, mom's really suffering. Oh, dad's really suffering. I just need to keep my mouth shut and not be a bother. And then your kid doesn't have a parent there to help them work through the normal stresses of life, because you have your own that are so intense that your kid will pull back. Your kid will withdraw so as not to be a burden on you or not to add to your burden already. Even if you tell them, ask me how I know. I work, this is my foray. This is my profession. I work with people in these situations. The teenagers go, I'm just going to keep my mouth shut so I'm not a burden on mom. She's already suffering with a lot already, so I'm not going to have anyone there. And so the kid doesn't have anyone there to help him through his normal stresses of life. Being picked on in school, grades, stress. And then he's got your divorce to look at. The fact that, oh, mom and dad love each other. Oh, mom and dad don't love each other. They're living in different homes now. And now I have to have two sets of stuff, and I have to go back and forth between different houses. What if you, the parent, had to live in two different houses every week? That would just really upend your life on a practical scale. Oh, but I forgot I have this outfit over at that house and the other one at this other house. Oh, I have this. Can't go back and forth. But now you have to deal with the interactions of parents who may or may not get along very well. In addition to getting your shoes back from the other house because you left them there on accident when y'all made the custody switch over the weekend. Oh, now your parents are griping because mom thinks that you need this kind of medical intervention, and dad goes, he doesn't need that. He's fine. And now they're arguing with each other, and You're in the middle. Divorce inflicts a tremendous amount of damage on children. If you are considering divorce, realize that you are going to be on your own, unless you're going to go for a guy who is not Catholic altogether, unless you're going to go with a guy who does not hold your belief system. You're going to suffer tremendously. There just aren't that many men to be able to fit with all the women who are looking for men, and you're competing against the single women. Okay, well, that was kind of a down note to end an episode of the Based Marriage Podcast, but I really hope, women, if you are out there and you are thinking about divorce, don't look to God to cover your mistakes. He ain't gonna do it. He's not gonna stop you from experiencing, you or your children or your husband, who you may or may not care about right now. He's not going to reverse or mitigate the psychological effects, the emotional effects, the financial effects, the generational damage inflicted on divorcing your husband. He's not going to cover those for you. He won't. He doesn't. That's not how God works. You're going to be broke. Your kids are going to be broke. And you can't just sit here and squeeze your ex-husband because you decided to leave. You can't just sit there and squeeze him for more money. For one, it's wrong. It's debt slavery. Because if he doesn't pay, they'll garnish his wages. It's debt slavery. I'm going to leave you, but I still want your stuff. That's a really awful definition of divorce. That's a horrible thing to do. But he's emotionally abusive. No, he's not. What's upstream of his emotional abuse? Did you gripe at him? Did you call him a bad person? Did you keep bringing up his stuff? We'll talk about that another day. Anyways, God is not going to mitigate all those effects of your choice. You're going to suffer through them, and it's going to suck. And it's going to have lasting generational effects, meaning on your kids, on your grandkids, on your great-grandkids. That's going to really put a record scratch in your entire family line for several generations. And then if they get divorced because they saw you get divorced and you kind of normalize that for them, you started the perpetuation of this really catastrophic thing. All right. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Based Marriage Podcast. Next time we'll have my wife on and see what she has to say about all these things, because she usually has some pretty good insight. All right. Y'all have a great day. God bless.
It's based. It's so based, and you don't even know it, baby.